I am having a really hard time thinking or talking or analyzing the UNC football team too much right now. And I want to, right? One of the teams in the triangle, right? Mack Brown, obviously a fascinating character. I'm a massive fan, as you probably know too much already, of Omarion Hampton, some of the players on the defense for UNC. I'm having a hard time talking about them or analyzing them without knowing who their quarterback is going to be. And it's a shame because I think they're a really interesting team going into this year. I just don't know where to start. Max Johnson and Connor Harrell, the two pretty much front runners to be their starting quarterback. I know Jacolby Criswell also on the roster, but he started at a disadvantage after transferring back in a little bit later. Max Johnson and Connor Harrell are simply so different that they change the way I would think of the UNC Tar Heels. Max Johnson has started the entirety of one season in his career, 2021 at LSU. In that year, he totaled 39 negative rushing yards. Now, if you're aware of how they keep stats, in college, sacks count as negative rushing yards. But still, you would think somebody, if they're fleet of foot at all, could at least end in the positives. Negative 39 rushing yards. That's what Max Johnson brings to the table. Which I think it's fair to say then the appeal of having Max Johnson as your quarterback would be his ability to throw.
Little context here in college football, rushing stats like sacks count.
Yeah, I just explained that.
Yeah.
Connor Harrell was listed the other option in the quarterback competition. Almost called it a controversy. Not a controversy yet. Quarterback competition. Connor Harrell listed as a dual threat quarterback coming out of high school. The first play that I can remember, Connor Harrell kind of being like, oh, look at that, was a 61-yard touchdown run against Campbell where he looked every bit as a runner. Right? In that the one start he has, I think he had 15-plus carries, didn't do a ton with it, but that was in the bowl game, he is a guy that brings a certain amount of spice with his legs. So I'm looking at this team and I'm like, all right, what do I know about UNC, right? All right, let's talked about NC State, maybe talked about Duke. Let's zero in on UNC here. What can I talk about? And I know that Omarion Hampton will be the engine that drives the offense. He had 1,500 yards last year, whole mess of touchdowns. He is All-American pick at running back. He's going to be the offense that drives the the engine that drives the offense. Okay, cool. I can't take it a step further than that. Because what is the offense? How will he be the engine that drives the offense? It's up in the air until you know who's sharing the backfield with him at quarterback. Right? If it's Harrell, you can run some of the read keep stuff, read option stuff that will then threaten the defense in a way. Like, let me just paint a picture for you. Connor Harrell hands the ball off to Omarion Hampton. Then he feigns, he fakes, like he brings the ball back into his stomach, covers it up, and runs off left tackle. The defense has to respect that because Harrell brings a certain level of ability with his legs that if a running back a linebacker or a safety or somebody doesn't go with him, you might get caught, right? Giving up a big play. Now, Max Johnson's in the game, same thing. Hands the ball off to Omarion Hampton, fakes it into his stomach, and runs 6'5", right, 230, whatever he is, runs off left tackle. They're going to be significantly less likely to have guys go with him, which means you need better blocking, you need more blocking, you need Omarion Hampton to shake off a tackler, you need something else on the front side. Or how about this, right? Max, like it's. I'm trying to think of the NFL equivalents here. The Ravens, and I know Connor Harrell's not Lamar Jackson, but just stick with me here. The Ravens don't necessarily need a passing game to have a really effective running game because they can spread with their multiple threats to run the ball. They can get guys going in the wrong direction and use deception and misdirection to have openings in the run game. We'll use the Bengals back when they had Joe Mixon, right? They had an effective running game, right? Joe Mixon was always near 1,000, 1,200 yards, whatever it is. But the way they opened up the run game was by threatening with Joe Burrow throwing the ball, right? Because you never want Joe Burrow, going downhill between the tackles because chances are he'll pop something, meaning an injury, not like pop a big run. That's kind of the difference in philosophies between the two quarterbacks for UNC, right? If Max Johnson's in, you open up things for Omari and Hampton by keeping the defenses honest with the arm. Connor Harrell, you could do it with the arm, or you could do it with him keeping it a few times and keeping the defense honest on the read-keep game. So I don't even know where to start with the offense because we don't know who the quarterback's going to be. And you might even argue that affects the defense. Because if you have just a run offense that's never throwing the ball, defense knows even a 3 and out is going to give them like 10 minutes on the bench. So then maybe they're blitzing more. Then maybe they're rotating less defensive linemen in because they're not getting tired as much. Meanwhile, if you go 3 and out with 3 incomplete passes, defense is back out on the field exhausted, and you're going to have to rotate through, and you might have to sit back in coverage.
20 seconds only came off the clock, and we're right back out here.
That's when the defense jogs on the field with scowls for the offense. Like it changes everything. So UNC fans, I'm telling you out loud on this show, I wish I could talk about your team more. I want to. I just don't know where to go with it until the quarterback gets named. Mack Brown was asked how much closer they are to naming a starting quarterback. Here it is in the coach's own words.
We'll have a scrimmage on Saturday that will be a really good scrimmage like the first one. And then after that, we'll start looking hard at depth charts and personnel more and more.
So we got a date to start talking about, like a deadline to start talking about making a decision.
We'll tell you when we tell you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mack Brown was asked about the differences in the quarterbacks on the team as well, which is kind of what I've been talking about. This is what the coach said.
It is. All 3 of them are good enough. That's a good thing. Now we got to figure out who's the one that gives us the best chance to win. And you've got differences in that Connor can throw and runs 4.4. He hadn't played very much. Max has played 1,600 games and thrown 900 passes in the SEC and played against very tough competition in a tough league and loud stadiums. And Jacolby's behind them simply because he wasn't here for the spring. So right now it would be Max and Connor competing at the highest level and Jacolby coming on.
Connor runs a 4.4. Max Johnson has thrown a bunch of passes. That's exactly what I'm talking about. That's how Mack Brown described him, right? Connor's inexperienced, but he runs a 4.4. Max Johnson has played a ton of games and thrown a ton of passes. How do you prepare for those two, and how do you analyze an offense that could be that different? I could sit here and wax poetic about J.J. Jones and Nate McCollum and Bryson Nesbitt, the pass catcher. But it's hard to even know what roles they're going to have until I know, like, are you throwing it 30 times a game or are you throwing it 20 times a game? I could talk about the offensive line. Think about your job, how different it is as a tackle. If you have, and this is not a derogatory term, if you have a statue as a quarterback, right, and as an offensive tackle, you always know where he's going to be, right? He's going to catch the shotgun snap, he's going to back up 3 yards, and he is going to be at 8 yards getting ready to throw the ball. Right? 8 yards behind the line of scrimmage. Or if you have somebody that could be anywhere. You want to hear a dirty little secret about offensive line play? As long as you are between the defender and the quarterback, you can pretty much get away with any hold you want, right? Because if they're running towards the quarterback and you're in between them, you're holding. There's no jersey stretching. There's no anything. The hard one is when you're holding and then the quarterback escapes out of the back or out of the pocket, and now suddenly the defensive player is trying to run away from you, and that's when jerseys stretch. It changes even as little as like how much you can get away with holding. And that's just one small thing. Now, Mack Brown has said over and over again, and he kind of hinted at it there, 7 to 10 days, right? He doesn't want it to go into the final week of preparation for their season opener. I get that. And we'll break down all of the insights and everything else once they make that decision. But it's really hard to talk about what this team is going to look like, what they're going to do, or what their top end is until we know who's going to be their quarterback. So that's why I'm not talking about him as much. Because I to use a rival, I could talk about NC State's offense till I'm out of breath because I know what Grayson McCall does well. I know what his job is going to be. It's going to be to distribute to all of these playmakers. I know who the running backs are. I know what their role is going to be in the offense. Like all of that, it's lined up. It's more known, ironically, because they have a ton of transfers, but at least we know like who they're going to be depending on.
Do you think UNC knows and they're just not telling us? Just to keep Minnesota guessing?
Possibly. And
actually, coaches do that stuff all the time.
They do. And actually, one of the only times I think it makes sense is when they are disparaging, that's the wrong word, different skill sets.
Mm-hmm.
Like when it's like you have a 6'3" pocket passer and a 6'5" pocket passer in there, and I'm like, just name it, right? They're getting ready for a pocket passer.
Yeah, they're getting ready for a pocket passer.
But if it's like, hey, we might have to have spies ready for Connor Harrell, and we might have to, not rush as hard to make sure we're setting the edge and keeping him in the pocket, or, we might have to have our secondary ready for quick game against Max Johnson. Maybe that is something they could do. Mack Brown doesn't strike me as that, though. He strikes me as somebody that recognizes, he's done his time in the media. Like, he knows that, like, the starter wants to feel like the starter, right? He wants to know those questions he wants answered. So, I maybe. I'm not going to say they don't. But he strikes me as someone is like once he knows he'll just let it.
I just remember like 2 years ago when it was Drake May and Jacolby Criswell when it was like a competition,
mm-hmm.
and I'm like everyone's like it's going to be Drake May, right? It's going to be Drake May. It's going to be Drake May. And Mack did not name him the starter. Mack Brown said, "Well, he will be the first quarterback on the field in our season opener." I'm like, "Oh, so he's your starter?" Like, no. He's just going to be the first quarterback out there on the field. I'm like,
it's a great point.
But he never actually officially named a starter before the first game.
And there's more motivation to do that now than then because the transfer portal is so rampant, right? You want to keep everybody on the hook as long as you can. So maybe, like I said, maybe. It just feels like we're really getting the split reps. And again, if they're pulling the okey doke on us, good on them. But then guess what? I still can't talk about your offense till you tell me. Even if give me I do the hostage thing. Blink twice if it's Johnson. Itch your nose if it's Connor Harrell. Let me in so I can really start diving into what your team's going to do.